Welcome to the History of LA Ska one-on-one sessions. I'm Junor Francis, alongside our producer, my good friend Eric Kohler. This series celebrates and aims to preserve and promote the ska, rocksteady, and vintage reggae scene in Southern California and beyond through insightful conversations with legends and modern-day talents, including those behind the scene. So many people working behind the scene to make this successful. We really and truly want to thank them. So whether you listen to this podcast series or watch us on YouTube, many thanks for your support and your participation. This long-awaited episode is our Latin Ska Roundtable, Part 1. Join us in welcoming two key players on the scene, singer, guitarist, Jose Padilla of Matamoska. Did I say it? Matamoska, right?
Yes, you said it right, yes.
Wow.
Hola.
Yeah. And I've even seen you guys and introduced you guys on stage and never really pay, deep attention to the pronunciation until tonight. And Bernie Lagos Kung Fu Monkey.
How's it going, guys? Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. So, welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. Our intention, really and truly, is to learn more about the origin of Latin Ska and to celebrate the genre that truly helped to keep the ska scene in Southern California and beyond, more specifically in Southern California, where we all live and around the globe, vibrant. So everyone, let's start by getting some background on each one of you.
Yes, Jose and Bernie joining us. Give us a little background growing up, where you were born and raised, if you don't mind.
You want to go first, Bernie, or?
Oh no, please go ahead.
Are you on a coin?
We're rock, paper, scissors, right? I guess I'll go first. My name is Jose Padilla. Parents are from Mexican descent. I was the firstborn generation Mexican American. I grew up primarily. My youth was like mid to late 90s. So I went to high school pretty close by in East LA, or Southeast LA, in a city called Bell Gardens.
Yes.
So it's a back then it was a little bit more rougher kind of a neighborhood. And so it was a little slummy. Back then, our high school there was a bona fide crack house in front of the high school that would sell all the kids marijuana, and the kids with more problems, harder drugs, and so that was kind of our youth. It was navigating through a kind of a very impoverished neighborhood, and a lot of the kids there grew up liking music. A lot of my friends had like very close ties to either gangster rap, which most of the kids were listening to, and then punk rock music, goth music. So we were really cliquey. So there was a lot of a lot of groups, and I hung out with mostly the people that were the goths and punks and the ska kids there. So.
And you come from a musical family?
I don't per se. I mean, my dad played like what most typical dads is drunken guitars, at family events and stuff like that. I did get the fortune of like attending schools where they had music programs, so I was in that stuff. So I would have like marching band, choir, singing, dance, all that stuff that kind of just gave me that musical kind of at least structure there. So we had a lot of that. So lucky enough to have that. But yeah, more so no music background in my family.
Okay. Yeah. Bernie, what about your background?
Well, I was born in San Diego.
Oh, we lost it.
Bernie, I think you're muted.
What am I?
Oh, there you go. Now you're better.
Okay. I was saying I'm from Tijuana. I was born in San Diego. I was raised in Tijuana all my life. I did all my schooling in Tijuana. And I started getting interested in music ever since I was a child. There was always music around, or there was always a song I was singing. And around middle school, I started getting interested in punk rock and like Jose, like goth music. My sister was into goth music. I got into punk rock. I got into alternative metal, reggae, all kinds of music. Listening to punk rock is what got me into ska, because I obviously I got into bands like the Suicide Machines in the late '90s. Interested in the sound, and then it got me searching, and then I started listening to the Clash, and I saw they make reggae and ska and all these beats, and I started wondering who were the bands, and I explored the two-tone era, and then I started listening to, I don't know, to the Scatolites or Toots and the Mytos or Byron Lee and the Dragoneers. So I kind of started digging. I think my love for punk rock got me into ska, because all the punk bands that I like were mixing ska into it, and just naturally happened. And yeah, I mean, Tijuana is a very multicultural city. It's a city of migrants. I always say it's a city of migrants, not necessarily internationally, but in Tijuana you find a melting pot of from all the states of Mexico, and more recently internationally, like now we have a Haitian community, or now you start listening to more different accents around the city. That means more people are moving south, and it's always been a migrant city. Most of the people who end up there is because some of them try to cross to the U.S. and weren't able to make it, and they got deported in Tijuana, and they started a family, and they started a life, and there's a lot of those stories in my town. I was born, like I said, I was born in the U.S., but I never grew up in the United States. I moved to the United States after in my 30s, so due to my work, but I always loved music, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
Jose, how is the recording coming over? Bernie is not so crystal clear on this end. How about from where you are?
It's a little choppy, but you can make out. Sometimes it slows down a little bit on my end.
Yeah, and actually it's better now too, Bernie. Yeah.
Sorry?
No, it actually seems to be a little bit better now. So start talking again. So Bernie, you shared through that background your some of the reggae and ska that you had heard growing up. Jose, what are some of those early reggae ska memories, as far as whether it's hearing on record or being exposed to someone from that scene?
From the ska scene, I picked up a tape from our drummer, or he gave me a mixtape of ska music.
So by then,
and
band.
Yeah, you know, in high school you just basically made mixtapes and you would give them to your friends. And he had one that said literally just ska, and I listened from front to back, and it had almost everything from like local bands. It had Mobtown, had a really old, not old, but really local bands. It even had our friend's band Chencha Berinches was on that thing, and
Yeah.
just a mixture of everything, right? And I was enthralled by it. I picked up, I mean, I saw a lot of it on mainstream, which is partly where I was able to access most of that stuff. So we were a jump skipping away from Orange County. I think we're the next town over. We could get the OC Weekly for free, basically. So that's where you would pick, Downey, California, Middle Earth Records. You can pick up the OC Weekly and see a bunch of ska shows for cheap, and I would go to those because they were more accessible to me. So I became an Aquabats fan pretty early on. I think I saw the Aquabats and St. Ferris play for like $10 or $5 back in the day.
And we're talking mid to the latter part, right?
Like 97.
Yeah.
98, 97, 96.
Right.
Yeah. that was basically when I was really knee deep in it. But there was also friends like Chencha Berinches that would do like the backyard shows, and I was fortunate to live in the middle in between both, so I could do the backyard shows with all the Latin kids, and then I would be able to jump over to the OC, like go see some shows at Chain Reaction for a few bucks, and I was not too far away from everything. So that's mostly where my experiences were early on. And then through like swapping records and swapping cassettes, you would eventually meet and find out new bands. I didn't even know traditional ska existed for the first like 5 years of listening to ska music. I'm like, this is ska. Oh wow! And so from an area where we didn't have a lot of resources, we kind of just made do with what we had. So
especially back then, yeah.
So that was pretty much my experience.
Right. So it was primarily some of the ska punk, ska pop type
bands
that you would see, right?
Yeah, radio stuff, anything that we could get our hands on, just that sounded good, we would.
Right. So let's move on to Latin ska, right? So obviously it means different things to different people.
Yeah.
My personal initial interpretation, having gotten into ska really in the early, let's call it 89, 90. But my first exposure and seeing what I considered at the time Latin ska were bands like Yes Ska and Jump with Joey and Minto Brew, right? So more of the Latin flavored traditional ska. Then I realized soon after, and a lot of those bands that I mentioned, were played shows for Lewis from Steady Beat. Then I realized that there was more to Latin ska, right? And I had heard of or even discovered like Los Fabulosos Cadillacs and Pantheon Rococo and King Chongo. But how do you, and Bernie, let's start with you. How do you like to define, if you can define Latin ska?
I mean, that's a very good question. I never thought about actually defining it, but
or consider.
Yeah. In my case, when I started listening to, let's just say, music in Spanish, it was the rock en español era.
Okay.
And
yeah.
We didn't know we were listening to ska. We started listening to Tijuana No, and so we didn't know it was ska. We just knew it was rock music, and then Maldita Vecindad, and then Fabulosos Cadillacs, Auténticos Decadentes, Las Víctimas, and we didn't know it was ska. It was just music that. So that was and my definition would be, is Latin ska would be just ska with it's very hard to define with the Latin flavor because there's so much difference in Latin America,
right?
But it's that Latin flavor they put into it. And in Maldita's case is Maldita Vecindad, they sound very Mexican, but if you hear Los Fabulosos Cadillacs, they sound very Argentine. It's the difference that I can't explain, but I know it's there.
Sure.
Or if you listen to La Mojiganga from Colombia, it's a ska punk band, but it's got its own Colombian flavor. And some other bands mix like they mix cumbia, they mix salsa, some others I remember a lot of these LA bands mixed even a lot of metal into their ska.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's and also it's the social economic factor that creates the sound from every specific area, and I see that a lot. Like hearing the difference in me being an outsider that lives in the U.S., the difference between the Latin ska scene and let's just say the American ska scene. Like let's go to Orange County and bands over there, they're amazing, but they're more poppy. They're like a feel good. But you go to East LA and they're like harder, and those are little. They're harder. They put more metal into it, or they're more punch, or it's more about protest. And I try to pay attention what makes everyone's music unique, and it's a lot of social economic factors, and in the areas depending where they live, it's the the end product of the music they do and the type of ska. And in the Latin world, you see a lot of that. You see a lot of struggle. You see a lot of poverty, hunger, and then most of these bands come from that, and it shows in the music. How to define it? It would be really hard. But it's just.
I think that's a
fascinating.
brilliant
Yeah.
explanation, extremely brilliant.
That
Go ahead.
absolutely is. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask Jose for you to chime in.
I believe he said it pretty eloquently. I mean,
Mhm.
I kind of translate it as like, how do you define Latin jazz, right? Like, how do you,
Willy Bobo.
There we go.
right? Celia Cruz, right? Like, how do you like put a Latin flavor? Like, it's a whole world where you have a spectrum of socioeconomic classes, uprisings, downrisings, protests. You have civil unrest. You have things that are very pertinent to these Latin people, and I think when, like Bernie said, if you pay attention to where they're coming from, then you will pick up on these kind of annotations about the song's about XYZ, this guy's song's about the government, this guy's a song. It's done with a context of Spanish language, right? But it's still pretty wide spectrum of definition. But
Very well said. Yeah.
Bernie,
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you about the formation of Los Kung Fu Monkeys. I think it was formed in 1997 in TJ.
In 1997, well, we were a bunch of high school kids. We were all from different schools. Some of us used to be in middle school together, but we weren't friends in middle school. We actually became friends in high school, and we were just friends hanging around. And we were into the scene. We were into punk rock, and punk rock got us into ska. We heard Rancid, we heard the Boston's, and that was our initial, like, this is what we want to do.
Mhm.
And I remember hearing the Suicide Machines, and we were like, we want to be that. We want to be like really punk, but there's something about this ska sound that's really it really gets to you. And that was our introduction. And over the years, we changed our own. We made our own sound, but making our own sound got us to explore deeper into the sound. I had the pleasure to meet the Scatolites, Lester Sterling before he left the band, and just to see them perform, it was mesmerizing. It was
that in
amazing.
TJ or here in America?
TJ, actually, I saw him in TJ, and the Agrolites opened the show for them.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic show, and I remember one of our first shows when we were in '97 playing in bars. We played with the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
Time ago. I still have a cassette. Maybe I have it here or not, but I still keep the cassette from that era. Mm-hmm. And also we were next to San Diego, and amazing bands were coming out. Bucko 9, one of the greatest ska punk bands from San Diego.
Yes.
I mean, there was bands like G-Spot, Turkey Mallet, Unsteady. I mean, older bands that we didn't know they were just local bands. We thought they were amazing, and the Donkey Show, and then I got to tour with the Slackers in Europe, and then Dave tells me, well, I used to live in San Diego, and I have this band, and I even got to meet his father. He speaks perfect Spanish. David still speaks Spanish, but I mean, I've seen a lot of shows that I've been lucky to see. I saw the Specials when they were on Warped Tour, and we were like, wow, we're seeing the Specials. I got to play Viva Latino when the Madness played the show, and they were like, some drunk dudes were bothering them, and I was backstage, but I always try to keep, I don't want to be that guy. And they were like, I think it was one of them will go like, yeah, it seems like you speak English. Can you help us out? And I'm like, we're tired. We're over this guy. And they took me. So it's those little stories that I got to tell that I enjoy, and it was Madness, right? And when we were watching Madness, this is a crazy part. We played Viva Latino, and we were watching Madness, but we were watching Madness with the guys from Maldita Vecindad,
Wow.
Campeón Rococo, and we were there. We were like,
Surreal.
I can't believe Pato and Chenka are like just dancing next to us, watching the band with us, and we can call them friends. And when I was growing up, I was 12 years old, and I was watching Maldita Vecindad, and for me to say like, this is what ska gave me. This is like gave me the opportunity to get to know all my heroes and play all these great shows and love all these fucking great bands, and ska gave me everything.
That's super cool. Yeah. Bernie, talk about getting signed and releasing music for the first time.
Well, the first time we like getting signed, like to a label, you mean?
Yeah, to a label and releasing your first music, or yeah.
Well, the first time we released our own music, we saw Punk Band and TJ make their own tape, and they got really popular, and we were like, we should do that. We found out where they recorded. This guy had a 1/4-inch 4-track, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we recorded 3 songs, and each song cost us, we paid $30 to record that initial cassette. And I found out with, and Tijuana is a manufacturing town. They call them maquiladoras, and they manufacture cars, they manufacture TVs, but they also used to manufacture cassettes.
Interesting.
So somebody told me there's a cassette factory over there. You should just go ask them how many tapes they can sell you, blank tapes. And I just went and bought like 100 blank tapes. And I took typewriting in middle school, so I can typewrite. I can typewrite properly, not like kids today going like this. But I actually grabbed the typewriter and I grabbed some labels, and I wrote Los Kung Fu Monkeys a bunch of times. And I cut them up and I put an inch cassette. And we went and when we Xeroxed the insert. We made our own insert. We Xeroxed it, and we started selling them for $1. And we played shows, and like, can you help us out? $1, and we bought more tapes, and we made more cassettes. and over the years, a band from Tijuana brought us to Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, the first time we actually played with Chencha Rinches. Mm-hmm. They were welcoming. They always been fantastic people. They always been great guys. Sorry, just a bug jumped on me. We played Los Angeles. We were a 4-piece, 5-piece. We were a 5-piece band. We didn't even have horns. We started getting to notice the LA scene, and we started finding out there was more bands that actually played in Spanish, and they were Mexican and on this side of the border. And then Tijuana, but like Tijuana, no, they're always going to be the kings of ska and reggae and punk over there. So they were the first introduction to the city, and a lot of bands have played ever since. Wow. Oh, and then after we did the cassette, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped out of the topic, but we actually going to Los Angeles. We met the guys from Union 13 in Tijuana, and they recommended us to somebody. We played a show at País de Do, and a good friend came to the show. I met him that day, Oscar Chavez, and he saw us playing. He went like, hey, this label is doing a compilation. It was going to be, the label was going to be called Limp Shrimp Records. It was Phil Raves, the guy from Mystic Records. They did the NoFX record and all this stuff. So we recorded a big ass studio. I think it was a studio for movie sounds because it was huge and they had all this crazy things. We recorded 3 songs. They never came out. And Oscar, the friend who introduced us, he started One Shot Records. And I found out he was going to start One Shot Records with his band, Teenage Rage, a hardcore band. And then he signed Schism, a band, friends of ours from Southgate. And I just came up to him and like, would you consider signing my band? And he said yes right away. I mean, I was 19, 20 years old. I mean, I got nothing to lose. If he's starting Epitaph is not going to sign us or anything.
I was like Bob Marley.
Yeah, I mean, like, would you like to put out our record? And they said yes. They took us to Riverside to Love Juice Labs, and we recorded our first record, Rebuilding the World, and we did 3 records with them.
That's great. And you never know unless you ask, right?
Yeah, and that record got us touring for the first time. We toured Mexico. By the time we got to In Transmission, our second record, We got to play a Warped Tour. We got to tour the U.S. with Voodoo Glow Skulls for the first time. We started doing more things, and we started playing more in Mexico. And little by little, at One Shot Records, I always said it, it's because of them we ever did something. So
that's amazing, and that's actually a good segue.
Right.
To
Yes. My question. Right. So, you guys toured up some 15 countries, headlines on some instances, here stage, the biggest names in the fraternity, Madness, Fishbone, Voodoo Glow Skull, Slackers, Agrolite. What are a couple of fun memories you can share with us?
Oh, man.
Bad ones too,
I mean, I remember the first time we toured, it was with, second time we toured, it was with Union 13 and a Riverside band called Backside. We took him to Mexico, and Union 13 was the headliner. After we played what would be by that time, our most successful Mexico City show, we were like, yay. Next day, we go to the pyramids. That was an amazing experience. So we went to Teotihuacan with the whole gang. I remember I twisted my ankle at the show. By just walking the pyramids helped. The next day I felt fine. It started raining, so it's not often that it rains, and so we got a little rain, and we got to climb the pyramids and something. So that's a fond memory. But also the little victories. I talked about this with a friend recently, but it's the little things, like the first time we were asked to tour the U.S., it was Voodoo Glow Skulls, and the first time we actually practiced as a band. After practice, we went to see Voodoo Glow Skulls in Tijuana. They played with Union 13 opening for them. Before they were called Union 13, they were just called Union, and we saw them, and then let's just say 7 years later, 6 years later, we're touring with Voodoo Glow Skulls in Mexico.
Okay.
But then we're touring with them for the first time in the U.S. So they took us under their wing, and we saw them play the first time we practiced, and they took us on our first American tour.
Yeah.
And we've been blessed to be able to tour with a lot of bands that we love, and play great shows. Play the hometown throwdown with the Mighty Mighty Pals. That was an email that I just got, and I can't believe this is happening.
That's cool. Yeah. We'd be remiss not to ask the clever name. How did the name of the band come about?
There's the myth and what really happened. So
give us both.
The logo, the monkey face, and the first monkey face, it was more like a cartoon, and then they changed. But the guys my friends are dumb enough to say, "Oh, that's your face on the logo. That's your ears. That's because since I was a kid, people always told me I look like a monkey. But then they created this, and I'm a martial artist, so not in Kung Fu, but I am a martial artist. And then everybody made up the myth if it was because of my face and my martial arts, and the reality was that when we got together as a band, we didn't have a name, and I remember one of my friends was going to do a house show, and we've never played, and I just went up to him and like, would you be okay if we play your show? And he was like, yeah, what's the band's name? And I remember we grabbed a Black Belt magazine because, I used to buy them. And there was like Monkey Kung Fu stuff. So let's call the band Monkey Kung Fu. And they were like, oh, that sounds cool. And the band who was playing what would be the headliner that day, Dead Panchos, that was the first ska punk band in Tijuana. Dead Panchos, and they helped us out because we didn't have a drummer. So the drummer helped us. He practiced we were just bass, guitar, and I sang. And a friend of ours who owned the trumpet knew Dead Panchos, and we went to their practice space and we're like, we don't have a drummer. Oh, I'll play drums. And the guy played drums for us. And he played our first show. He helped us out playing our first show. But Dead Panchos came afterwards, and they already had horns, and they weren't. We thought they were amazing because we'd never seen them. And then after the years, and I see videos, they were like, oh, they weren't that good, but they were getting there. But that was when I was 17. I was like, oh wow, they're the best band in the city.
Sure.
And but they gave us a shout out, but they didn't call us Monkey Kung Fu. They said, oh, this one goes to Los, because Los is the equivalent of the in English.
Sure.
And they were saying in Spanish, this goes to Estaba para Los Kung Fu Monkeys. And people just started calling us that.
There you go.
Yeah, I love that.
And I remember some of the guys, oh, it's a dumb name. We're not going to get anywhere with that dumb name. We'll change it afterwards. And we never did. And I'm glad we never did.
No,
And the name actually did get us, it did help open a lot of doors, because the name itself, it's kind of interesting.
Clever. Absolutely. Bernie, one more question for you, then Jose, we're going to move on to you. Bernie, can you share some of the approach that the band has to recording cover songs, renditions? Particularly fond of, you all do Rancid's Blood Clot and The Cure's Boys Don't Cry. But talk about kind of your approach to why and maybe how.
Well, the first cover we actually did, and we never recorded it. It was the first song we played. It was No Face by the Suicide Machines.
Okay.
We had a female keyboard player when we started the band, and we didn't have horns, and we did that. We just did the cover like it was. But when we did Boys Don't Cry, obviously they're not a ska punk band or in any way, so we were like, The Cure is one of my favorite bands, and it was my first or second show I ever went to when they were on the Wish tour. Plus, I think it was the second show. But Boys Don't Cry was always I thought it was always a great song, and I just told the guys, hey, why don't we do Boys Don't Cry and ska punk?
Yeah.
And I know it's like, you listen to Rebuilding the World, it's a very raw record, because we didn't know how to play. We kind of figure it out. So and it's still to this day one of the songs that they still ask for when we do a set anywhere. They were like, Boys Don't Cry. People will scream it out. It was just because it was one of my favorite bands, and I know some of the guys love The Cure too, and it sounded like a good idea, I guess.
Nice.
It was.
And Blood Clot, we also did Screaming at a Wall, but we did it like really hardcore. We really wanted to do hardcore, like Minor Threat, and because we love hardcore as well. Like, I grew up with that kind of stuff as well. So, but we did Lobo Hombre en Paris, a pop song from the 80s from a band called La Unión from Spain.
Okay.
And we did it in our own kind of punky, skyish, saxophone driven, because it's a saxophone driven song. And when we did Blood Clot, Elvis Cortez from Left Alone, he has some Elvis records, and he was doing a tribute to Rancid. And he asked us, hey, you guys want to do the tribute to Rancid? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, what songs? And he gave us a bunch of songs. And I think it was Hassan who said, we should do Blood Clot, because he explained, it goes with your voice, it goes with this. And I guess we just kind of figure out how to do it in our own way. And, and a lot of people were like those saxophones, because we dubbed saxophones instead of including a lot of different type of horns. I don't know, we just wanted it to sound like a truck is running right straight to you. So that's a good way to explain it, I guess.
It is.
An excellent,
Very much
excellent,
so. Nice,
excellent,
nice.
excellent explanation. Jose, to you now, sir. So
Yes.
take us back to California, late 2000 in Montebello. I used to work near there.
Oh, really?
Matamoska was formed or born or evolved. Any of those adjectives that actually suits.
Yes. No, so going back to when I was in high school, actually most of my band members were people that I knew from middle school, and hung out, and we had our relationship in high school. I actually had bands in high school. Like I would play in metal, thrash. I would play in punk bands. I had a ska band with my brother. It was called the Skadias, which is funny. And then we would not do much other than play at each other's houses, backyards. So that was basically our pastime, was to play at somebody's garage or backyard or something until we get kicked out, or our parents come home, and they kind of just ruin the whole fun. So that was in high school, right? And so when we graduated high school, I lost track of all my friends. I, got a job and I started going to school. And then one day I had a really bad breakup with a girlfriend. It's funny. And coming home, on the corner of my eye, I saw two of my really good friends from high school eating tacos at a drive-through car wash on the same block of my house. And I pulled over and I says to them, I'm like life kind of sucks now that we're adults. Can we go back to high school days and play music again together now? And so these guys I was never in a band with them, but we were always kind of just not rivals, but we knew about each other's bands and we had friends and we knew about each other. And it was Hector, the bassist, and the drummer, Richard. And he said, "Cool, yeah, we can start another band." And as poor kids go, it's like, whose house can we practice at, right?
Right, of course.
Yeah, I had the fortune of having my own room at that age, still living at home. And so I voluntold my friends that I was going to use that for practice and to start my band with my friends again. And my bedroom became a literal, there's some videos of that happening, but it became a literal sound recording / practice rehearsal studio. And that's all we would do. We would go work, I would flip burgers, and then off time we'd just practice, record music. And the funny thing is, when we were doing that, I remember going to our house and going to watch Bernie come through with this new record, with his Top Shot Records album release thing that I had. That was one of our early on, before our first show, before we started recording things. We were in the middle of writing things, and so that's the birthplace of that scene was around that area. We had a venue, right? We had a legit place to play music now. We go.
Remember our house? We even slept there, dude.
I was there with Clemente. He was doing sound as little kid. He didn't even start in Resistencia yet.
So you saw those Kung Fu Monkeys play back then, around that time?
Yeah. It was right when we were starting writing music, kind of just getting back together. I want to say 2000, really early 2000, maybe 2000, November-ish, early 2001 or something like that.
Wow.
And so, and that was knowing, because I think a lot of it failed. We failed ourselves good, or just not having venues or places to play at as kids, and only having backyards and these kind of makeshift venues for ourselves was not very lucrative for us. So there was no real stage for us, right? There's no real place. When things like the artists came around, it kind of became your stage, right? Now you have something to work for. At least you have a place to go to perform. You look at bands like Kung Fu Monkeys. They released a fucking album that is on a disc instead of just being taped on a karaoke machine. And so you saw that, and you kind of strived to do it as well. We didn't really have a record label that had any interest in it. We didn't have any friends like that or anything. We did have, luckily, we met somebody from a small record label called Obscene Records, and he would kind of just ghost kind of release stuff. He would just basically show me how it's done, basically. And then I eventually learned how to make my own records. And then basically I was a guy in the parking lot selling demos and stuff. And I would go to Ritmo Latinos. I would go wherever they would sell or try to let you sell on consignment, and I would just drop off 20 or 10 discs and just make my rounds. And so, I would go to venues and see if they would let me sell CDs, even though we weren't playing. I would try to hawk the crap out of our music and try to get as many places to play us, and I would email them to a bunch of record stations with curators saying, "Hey, if you got a Latin ska audience, you can play this, and they might like it, and it'd be nice if you played this on your radio station," and a writer and this whole thing, a bio and things like that.
Yeah.
So I had to learn really fast how to do that, because that was my job. Everybody else partied and were playing music.
You were responsible.
Yeah.
Certainly has played off, and on that front, Jose. So talk about touring the U.S. If I'm not mistaken, you also toured Mexico, South America, and some of the bands you've supported
Oh,
for years.
We have not toured yet. We're supposed to, before the pandemic, we're supposed to do Brazil and
Oh,
a
okay.
little bit of we did tour Europe. We did do a stretch in Europe, but it's mostly local United States stuff, East Coast, West Coast.
Where did you play over in Europe?
We played in Brussels. Oh, we played in Belgium, Germany, France. The one right next to Brussels, the really rich one. Shit, I forgot the name of it. Not Luxembourg. I'll remember it. I forgot my geography, but all I know is we played Netherlands, a few times in Germany, things like that. And it's mostly like centered to the West Europe. We didn't go as far as
Switzerland. Is that what you were thinking of?
No. It's everybody in Belgium calls it like their cousin country because it's really close to all the really rich banks are there.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
But
who are some of the bands that you've toured and played with over the years?
Mostly, a lot of the stuff that we toured and played with were local scene bands. Like we had like Be Like Max that we did a bunch of runs. We have Steady 45s that we did a bunch of runs with. We have people out in on the East Coast that we do runs with. Devin K and the Solutions. And we do a lot of the US kind of circuit. So we do shows with like Slackers and things like that, but they're usually just one-offs, like either up north in the Northwest or things like that. But yeah, we usually just kind of live in a van and kind of just sleep on grounds and floors and things like that most of the time, and nothing really fancy.
Couch surfing.
Yeah. It's the best. I think the best times I've ever had was like, you unload the van and then everybody runs into the house that we're supposed to stay at. And I'm like the last one trying to make sure everything's locked up and secure. And I show up and I look around. I look around and I'm like, everybody's kind of cozy on the couch. Everybody has a cushion. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm gonna sleep under the kitchen table tonight again.
and you're being truthful right there.
Yeah, I'm being completely honest. I've been kicked, like somebody's grandma kicked me awake one time because I was underneath the kitchen table.
You're not exaggerating, right?
Wow. That's
so
amazing.
in 2007 to 2010, you guys took a hiatus. Then you came stronger than ever in a subsequent reunion. Take us back why you took a hiatus and why you reunited.
2007. I had a, how I said it was like I was in charge of everything.
Yes,
and so I had
burnout for sure.
Absolutely.
It was
delegate
mostly
responsibility.
it was very much a burnout / I was trying to work also like on a TV career and stuff like that, but nobody really never took off at all. Mundos had like this video DJ thing that I was trying to go out for, and then it just failed, and it was very stressful. And so like a man of kind of just learning patience and learning kind of just limits, I just said, you know what, I've done this for 6-7 years. I am done for now.
Understood.
And I took a hiatus. I went back to school and I got my engineering degree. And then as soon as the engineering degree was finished, I started working, and then I met my buds again, and I said to them, I can actually, I want to do this again, right? And so they were gracious enough to say, yeah, man, like we understood where you were at. The guys, they had their own thing and their own project, so they took some time off too as well from the band. And when we came back, we came back a little stronger with new people, and some of the same old people, right? And we haven't stopped yet, so which is like the best part.
No, that's amazing.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you.
Will you name check those that are currently in the group?
Yes. Right now, our lineup is me. We have Ray Vargas on lead guitar. We have Eddie Rodriguez on bass, Lucas Jacoby on drums. We got Esteban Flores on keys. We have Robert Verdugo on trombone. We got Jovan Loera on saxophone, and then we got AJ on saxophone as well. So,
okay. So that's how many? That's how many pieces?
Let me see the numbers. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Nice.
7.
Yeah, excellent. Bernie, we want you to name check your musicians as well. But one more question for you, Jose. I was reading online. This might have been a few years ago, but Ska Core Cartel.
Yeah, that's my pseudo label that I made
Not a
because nobody
dangerous
would sign us.
Junior was scared for it.
No. It was just a pseudo name because nobody would sign us, and so we didn't have. Instead of saying Jose Padilla's record label thing, and then I just kind of gave it a slap to the name, so that people kind of just took it a little bit more seriously than just by not having anything. So it was kind of like something we made up at the time, and kind of used it as a pseudo kind of record label at that time.
Right. Okay. But certainly stuck. So
Yeah.
Bernie, we have more questions for both of you, but definitely want you to acknowledge your bandmates.
Oh yeah, I have to name them all.
or whoever
Just
you
important, just the important ones.
Just the important ones. Well,
But remember, the ones that you leave out, you will pay the price.
Oh yeah.
So Hecky Verdugo he's our drummer. Sometimes he's our bass player, but mainly drummer. Carlos Rojas has been playing guitar. Eddie Cervantes has been playing trumpet. Eddie's from Los Angeles. He used to play he still plays in La Resistencia, and he used to play in the Meddlers, And then we had different people who play with us, like Zach Rowe, who's also from the LA area. He plays trumpet. It's just who else is playing? Esteban is playing the drums sometimes. So it just depends on where we're gonna go and play. But also because some of the guys sometimes they can tour, sometimes they're already committed with other musicians. But yeah, those are the main guys, and they kind of change every time depending on the tour we're going to.
Sure. Sure.
Cool. So I think we should perhaps take a minute to acknowledge some of the promoters and venues in Los Angeles and the greater LA area. It would include all the way up to Santa Barbara and San Diego, that are in some cases still remain instrumental in the success and growth of Latin Ska and Latin Ska core. I'm going to leave out some, but let me rattle off a couple of names. For instance, we have Elvis Cortez.
Oh yeah, Elvis.
Ska War, Skaland, Concrete Jungle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you think of any more? We have Backyard at the Warehouse Parties.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Please.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think the LA the Ska Wars should be more labeled as the Evil Core.
Evil Core.
Right. Yeah. Very, very active. In fact, just not too long ago was a Skaland, right? Earlier this year. Yeah.
Yes.
That's down there in Crenshaw, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The old
was massively successful.
Yeah, at Catch One.
Yeah, very successful.
Yes.
Right.
This early.
Really good show. Yeah.
Right.
And Concrete Jungle, also promoter, right?
Also,
yes.
A ska and punk promoter, yes.
Right. Adrian from Rockery used to do the Skank and Reggae Fest, which was super cool over the years.
He did that a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a couple of years also with Golden Voice at the Shrine. But name some.
I went to that show. I remember that show.
Those are great. But name some other promoters from the scene.
I would like to mention Balti Rodriguez. He's the one who's at our house, and he had the Allen Theater in Southgate.
Yes, Allen Theater. Absolutely.
And maybe he's not as he's not promoting as much as he used to back in the day, but he was very instrumental and then getting a lot of fans to play shows. So let's just say
Implacable, Jorge Leal también.
Leal. I mean,
Yeah.
he's not. He gives lectures now because he's got a doctor. He's a good guy, and he was the first guy to bring us to LA. I remember that.
Yeah.
Must be.
He was the one that booked us to. Yeah, he was the one that actually booked us first shows in Hollywood. That's Jorge Leal. Yeah.
Okay.
He was very instrumental in like a lot of bands going to bars and things that we wouldn't have a chance to. Like,
He get us to play venues like the Roxy and the Whiskey. Like Jorge Leal actually like as from somewhere else.
Yeah.
He was the guy who gave us a chance to play a real venue in
Nice.
LA.
Yeah. And I remember, at least in the 90s and maybe even early 2000s,
Luis.
in Terraza Hamay, right?
Oh yeah, in Montebello. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's Sub Rock. That's LA. Sub Rock.
Well, sorry, what was that last one you said?
LA Sub Rock. That's the one who would do the Terraza Hamay shows.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And then towards the pre-pandemic, I think Las Globas played an instrumental role.
They were doing a lot of those too.
Yeah, they were doing
Even in Orange County at the Slide Bar, we got to play a bunch of shows with for to the public. That was great.
And I think JC Fandango was a big one too back in the day.
Right.
Javier Castellano. Yeah.
You are right.
And what venue is playing an instrumental role now is Don Juan.
Oh yeah,
Don Juan.
Yeah, Don Juan.
Yeah. Right.
Don Juan. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's go back, and Junior touched on this, but let's go back and talk about the importance of some of the backyard parties and some of the warehouse parties.
Super important.
Yeah. Did Matamoska play those back in the day, or did you attend a bunch of them?
That was our we would do. There was one year when we first started, or early on, we would literally do 3 backyard shows every weekend nonstop.
Really?
In South Central, in LA, and North Hollywood, all over LA.
And were these primarily people that you knew, or like random people?
We were
or both.
People were just saying, "Hey, we have a show. Do you guys want to be on the bill?" I'm like, "Yes." And then we would just go, and then we would show up, and then we'd just wait for the cops to show up. And most of the time, cops did show up, and we would get harassed and.
that is the epitome of grassroots, right? Literally.
But I mean, if you can imagine a backyard filled with 300 kids drinking, dancing, punching each other.
No,
that's huge.
Yeah.
Talk about up close.
It's huge.
Really...
Up close in person, no stage. You're just in there's nothing separating. But I lost a couple teeth, like just playing shows, and you walk, you push instruments down the street, and you became very, very ingrained in the area, and you kind of became appreciative of all those experiences just because they gave you more fuel for your music to proceed. Like they fired your ability to write more music or to hang out with each other and to meet new bands, in every backyard. Like early on in LA scenes, like shows that were being put on for ska weren't really all ska shows. They were mostly half metal bands.
Okay.
And then the bill would be basically like 4 metal bands and then 2 ska bands, and the first ska band started at 12:30 at night, and they were at these like grimy little Legion bar shows and stuff like that.
I remember playing those.
Remember those? And I remember American Legions. I remember the bill would be a bunch of punk bands, and they would just talk shit to you because you played ska, and then you were up at 1:30 right after last call, and then you have 30 minutes to play, and then you do it, and you did these things, and
is this the same?
No way. No way. No. Now we. No,
I mean, not necessarily for you, but for ska band.
Oh, is it still like it's really hard? No, I mean now it's. If you, I kind of envy a lot of the new bands. Like I'm like, I'm just like, geez, you have so much, like so many contacts you can just talk and get in venue and start playing, and so much exposure. Like this is insane. You don't have to put yourself out there a bunch of times and try to figure it out. I think now it's a lot easier, especially since there is a crowd, since there is an audience. Like when I took a break and came back, that's when I felt the change. Like when I took a break, and 3 or 4 years later, I came back and I realized people were like buying tickets, and these shows that at venues were actually getting sold out. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this never happened. Like
more credible venues, more credible promoting.
Yeah.
The scene also must have grown during that time period.
Oh yeah, insane. So many more bands. I mean, for back in the day, it was like basically it was Chencha Berrinches, Viernes 13, Kung Fu Monkeys, Nueve Vidas. It was just a bunch of like smaller, like there might have been a handful of bands, and they were basically from each region of LA. So you had one band from North Hollywood that would be kind of popular. You had one band from Riverside. You got the band that was pretty popular. You had the one band from like Wilmington that was super popular, Elvis, right? And then you had the one band from East LA that was pretty popular, which is I guess us or whatever. And then you had South LA, you had West LA, you had one band from there was one band from every region that would try to infiltrate their regions. And so we invited each other's bands as much as we could, and we infiltrated all these areas to get more exposure to be able to broaden our horizons with people going to these shows.
And some good camaraderie.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. There was not. I don't think I've ever had a bad blood with Bernie ever. Like I think.
No, I mean we went pretty okay with each other over the years.
I don't think.
Actually, the main reason for this is we need you guys to talk through. No,
yeah, this is therapy session. All right, we're looking to build some trust, Bernie.
Okay,
I need words of affirmation.
so Bernie, talk about. Did you guys play a bunch of warehouse parties or backyard parties?
Well, yeah, and Tijuana when we started, we didn't have venues, so like a real venue for. I mean, we were a handful of local bands, and we played at backyards. I did a show at my house when I was 17. That was the first and the last because my parents were like, "It's pretty cool," but we weren't expecting also like 300 people at my parents' house.
Right.
That was pretty fun. But we would do that. We were like, oh, this guy's got a big yard. Let's do a show. And we would bring and we would mic up with we would put the mics on amps so we could have because we didn't have a PA. And then and suddenly there was somebody promoting a show and like, oh, you guys want to play at this bar, or you guys want to play here, and or there was a big warehouse in Tijuana where they did big shows. It was called Studio Uno. It was like a radio station owned it. So little by little we started playing from houses. Then we got to bars and some stages, and suddenly we started getting invited and over the years to play and open for bands and stuff like that. But we did a bunch of house shows. That was, I mean, they were fun. It was like a let's just say when you're not the popular dude, it's a good way to make friends.
Sure. Yeah.
Interesting enough. So one question that has been baffling a lot of people, including myself, why do you feel there's approximately more Latin bands leaning into ska punk, ska core instead of more traditional scatterlights kind of ska for both of you?
Jose, you first. If you agree with us, David.
I do agree. I mean, I honestly think that there's more ska punk bands, but I don't think there's too much of a difference of people that go to these like venues, right? To these events. So, but I think there is more ska punk, and I think it has to do with like I think we were talking about the definition of Latin ska. Like I think you have to do with you put yourself in a place where you have kids that generally probably not affluent. They don't have the resources. They have a couple struggles. That typically you would not see in a more kind of like socioeconomic class that's a little bit higher end, right? And so punk music, just in general, it speaks to the disenfranchised. It speaks to the people that believe, that there's something wrong with society. And so, or something wrong with the way that the either government's being run or something, XYZ. And I think the punk aesthetic, or this punk and the punk movement, just kind of brings those kind of elements together, and people are a little bit more attuned to that, and that's what they internalize and want to make music reflect that, right? So at least that's for me. I mean, I
like that. Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Bernie, what about you?
I mean, can you repeat the question for me?
Just the question again.
It was we feel that there's exponentially more
leaning towards
more Latin bands,
punk,
ska,
as opposed to traditional, like you'll get Delirium, Steady 45s, Agrolites type, Chris Murray.
Yeah, I see that more like in the US. In Mexico, it's a little different. It's there's a very wide spectrum, but I can tell you this: there was more bands that go for the Latin rhythms of ska punk music.
Okay.
Ska punk music, they go like more into mixing cumbia, salsa. Even some of them would mix a little norteño music and so there's I can say there's a lot of that in Mexico. There's a good traditional scene, Jamaica 69, Mascatesta, who else?
The Travelers down there, right?
Yeah, and Inspector, and Chewy from Inspector has another band, but it kind of slipped my mind right now. But Capital Sound, like that's their name. There's a good scene of that, but there's also like I would say in Mexico the ska punk scene is not as big as the ska scene that mixes like Panteon Rococo, that mixes all these different rhythms. Not like La Tremenda Corte, Royal Club, all those. All the Mexico, all the Central Mexico scene. That's a lot of that, and ska punk is always a little bit. It's been a little bit less than all of them, but it's just there. I mean, if you go to every state, it's all different. It's all different.
Sure. Yeah.
But how about here in Southern California?
In Southern California, I see the land scene that tends to go to the harder sounds.
Yeah,
and I mean, there is a new traditional scene like the Steady 45s and all those bands. And there's a lot of Latin people and Mexican people in those bands that I know. But I back in the day, when I started playing in LA, I remember Chencha Berrinches, and they had this weird mix, but it was hard, like it was hard. And then I started seeing bands like La Resistencia. It's like a ska core all the way, and suddenly I see a band like the Paranoias that they're slightly different, or Matamoska, but then I compare them to, like I said originally, like the social economic situations of every city. I go to Orange County and they sound more poppier.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it's I don't know, it's a different lifestyle, different status. It's just things that I like to pay attention and see why is the difference, and why Latin people tend to go to the harder sound. Maybe I would say it's a lot of minorities like ourselves would understand it. There's a lot of struggle in between in our lives, so it reflects. It's a reflection of our situation. It reflects in the music.
I have a joke. It's every Latin punker has a portrait of Joey Ramone on their wall.
I just saw yours. Yeah, I'm gonna say something.
Oh, there we go. Yes. Yeah, no, thank you both for sharing your thoughts on that. Here's another one for you. Do you feel that there's greater crossover and a shared fan base between the Latin ska and reggae scenes than say compared to say the more traditional ska and the reggae scenes, because we've, as Junior can speak to really well, you know, those scenes don't always fans of ska bands don't always come out to see fans of reggae bands. But you feel if you're in Adrian, right, who we mentioned earlier from Roscoe, and when he had the Skink and Reggae Fest, he would blend some, right? So curious for your thoughts.
I mean, I like reggae. I think it mixes very well with all these bands. I mean, I wouldn't see why people would be not happy with the difference. I would just say I enjoyed it. I enjoy reggae as much as ska or punk rock, and there's something special about reggae. I think in any show it would blend perfectly with us. I mean, I've toured with a reggae artist. I toured Canada with my band, and we were opening for Jack Carter, and Jack Carter is a reggae artist. Mm-hmm. He's from Jamaica, and we connected very well. We were having a great time, and we shared a lot on that tour. So I think it blends well. I wouldn't understand why people wouldn't like something or the other. I know there's people who are more militant to their sounds. I remember a friend someone who became a friend years after, but he was a kid, and he came up to me, and he's a skinhead, and he went like, "What do you listen to?" And I told him I listen to everything. I listen to hip hop, I listen to metal, I listen to punk, and like, "Oh, but you're into this, so you should only listen to this." And I'm like, no. I mean, you don't go to Baskin Robbins and eat vanilla all the time. Every time you go, there's 31 fucking flavors you can try, right? I mean, I want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy music, and I wouldn't see why people wouldn't be understanding of one sound or the other. Maybe that's just me. I mean, the purist, maybe I mean, that's on them. I don't know. You can be a purist and still enjoy everything else.
Of course, yeah.
I like that. You can be a purist and enjoy everything.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, Jose, what are your thoughts?
I think the same way. I've seen like I've gone to traditional shows, and every time I go to traditional shows, like I'll meet at least a couple of people that know my band. So it's like they're like, "Oh, I love your band." I'm like, "Cool." I didn't think anybody here would like that. Like I didn't think any. And a lot of them were truthfully like we haven't been to a punk rock or ska punk show in a while, but they we at one point we were like their gateway kind of band to the traditional scene and stuff like that. And it sounded like, and so like I would go, I've gone a couple Steady 45 shows or Western Standard Time shows and stuff like that, and I do meet people and I recognize them. I'll talk to them and I'll tell them how the band's going, and I'm surprised that you like my band and you come to this kind of show, and but it makes sense. If you like music, you kind of, I don't see I mean, I wouldn't be stuck in something. That would be hell. Like if you were stuck in one genre of music. Nowadays I listen to everything I can.
But that's different if you're not a musician though. From musician, I suppose you listen with different ears.
Oh yeah.
Right, but for supposedly someone who just listens for listening's sake.
Yeah, and I think the shittiest part about being
in your lane, I don't necessarily.
No, I think, and it also is part being a musician. The shitty part is you can't see a band without putting on your like musician goggles and looking at their technique and their guitars gear. You can't just like turn that off or kind of just looking at their pedals and looking at the soundstage guy and looking at, I'm just looking at a lot of how many monitors you got in-ears? Do they have in-ears? No in-ears. Oh, that's crazy.
Right.
How many wedges are on stage? Like, so
nice.
I think we're coming to the end. So I wanted to ask though, if what are some of the most crucial international ska festivals, and not only in Los Angeles, but throughout the Latin Americas that you are aware of?
I think what is it? Like there's the Victoria Ska Festival in Victoria, Canada, and the Montreal Ska Festival.
Montreal as Was no,
Yes.
Victoria, yeah, very well known.
I think-
Texas, Mexico, and then Mexico and Central
City.
Mexico.
Yeah. I think there's one in Baja California, no? There's
I love Ska Fest in Rosarito.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those. Mm.
Those are,
And they like Ska Core Invasion and Ska Wars that Evil Core.
right.
I mean, those. I think those are great. They're always sold out.
Yes.
and there's one on the East Coast up in
Supernova.
Virginia. Supernova Ska Fest. Yeah,
Right,
that was always fun.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
right. That's coming up in November.
Yeah.
Was it October?
September.
September,
Yeah.
yeah.
But Bernie, Los Kung Fu Monkeys played Tazy and the Ska Parade's anniversary. Right? You did one right before the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was our last tour. Yeah.
Wow. How did that go?
It was fun. I mean, Hans Gruber and the Diehards are a fucking great band. Joker's Republic, amazing kids, very talented. 3 guys. They're I can see them in the future becoming something greater.
Oh, no.
The Holofonics, the follow were just, they play so tight, so perfectly. Like it's watching music nerds at their best, and I love that. I admire people who actually are perfectionists in their craft, and I feel that the Holofonics try to be perfect, and they're a great fucking band. So that was our last actual tour that we did before pandemic, and and it was fun. It was fun. We this is something we did naturally, comes to us, and we like to do. And like I said, music has made it easy to make friends all over the world. And maybe for a guy that wasn't really easy for him when he was in school and stuff like that, music got us in.
Yeah.
So, I was going to ask, how difficult and challenging is it to get on some of these international festivals that are taking place worldwide?
Well, in our case, it wasn't as easy, but I've never seen it. I've never seen things difficult. So maybe they're not as easy, but
what an outlook.
No, that's great.
In our case in Tijuana, we had some good people that were willing to give us a hand without even there was nothing we could offer to them, and they still lent us a hand.
Wow, that's great.
We started playing shows at houses, then bars, then suddenly we get to play a little venue in TJ, and it's owned by the guy who's the biggest promoter in the city. And we go up to them, and then like, could we open for Baco 9? Because we knew they were gonna play, and we just went up to them, and like they were like, yeah, you guys mind giving out flyers and maybe selling some tickets? I'm like, no, we were gonna play with Baco 9. And little by little we started opening, because and we started playing where the local scene wasn't big, and maybe this is why I see that I don't see difference or any animosity towards any other genre or subgenre from ska or like their traditional, that because when we grew up, we were one of 2 ska punk bands. There was a third wave ska band, and that's all the ska bands in the city. But we played with the hardcore bands, we played with the punk band, we played with the alternative rock band, we played with the reggae band. I remember there was a reggae bands and stuff. We all played together because we always saw it as a local scene and not exactly a ska or punk scene. So we called it la escena musical de Tijuana, Tijuana's music scene. And back in the 90s and the 2000s, there weren't that many of us. When we started to grow is when everybody started doing everything by niche. But I mean, little by little, we started doing that, and the same promoters, and we are very grateful to Bulldog Productions in Tijuana. Enrique Van Borstel is the owner. He's always supported us, and it's because of people like him that when we were going to do our first record release show, we didn't know how to do a show like properly. He's like, you guys are going to come and work in my office for a week. You're going to do this. I'm going to tell you what to do. We're going to rent out the venue, and you're going to try to sell tickets. And he taught us how to do the work. another person would never do that. Or maybe there was something he saw in us. And I remember he was there when we played Viva Latino. Viva Latino is one of the biggest festivals in Latin America.
Right.
The biggest festival in Mexico City. And he was on stage watching us play. I mean, this was 2012, and we started in '97. He met us in '98.
Wow.
So all those years after, we did a 25-minute set because it was a big festival. Everybody plays short sets. The whole in front of the stage, they told us it's gonna be empty. It's Friday, the worst day of the festival, and it's early. It was packed. People were
nice. Dead wrong.
Yeah. but that's the importance of keeping those relationships too.
And I get off stage and he tells me, I don't have anything to say about this show. It was just perfect. That means a lot. So people like him got to do our first festival in Tijuana.
Yeah.
But we put in our effort too. He told us, you guys mind working this show, and I'll let you play this show, and that's how we got into working production, and that became my profession for many years. Not work for a record label, but it was those little things that got me in through the door that helped me out to develop my career in life. You know,
the willingness.
No, I love that. Yeah. Bernie, you touched on earlier the importance of Tijuana No. Who are some of the other godfathers or godmothers or those that you two want to give credit for, maybe not just specifically for your bands, but just for helping popularize, right, and really shine a light on the Latin ska or Latin ska punk type sound?
Yeah, well, we didn't know it was ska in Tijuana. No, there were a generation before us,
right?
And they would just, and we were like, wow, and we started studying them. I want to give them credit, but I also want to give credit to bands like, there's a band nobody knows. They're called, I don't think anybody knows about them. I still got the recordings digitally for myself. They were called BAM. Okay. I remember when I saw them play, they became my local hero idols, and I wanted to be them. And so they used to mix up. They used to play like pop punk, but they used to mix up ska punk like Operation Ivy.
Oh, nice.
So they had ska songs, and they played pop, but they could have been a Fat Records band, but maybe they were, for a Mexican band, they were ahead of their time, and maybe they weren't. People didn't pay attention to them because they sang in Spanish, and maybe a label. But there was no popular punk labels in Mexico, so the only ones we knew were Epitaph.
Yeah.
It's Damn Bam, Tijuana No. Natural is a reggae band that also helped the scene back in the day. You know, like they were one of the guys playing reggae. Dead Panchos opened the door for us in the local scene. You know, and they were a great band, and we run into each other every once in a while, and they're like, it's nice to see people who helped us out, you know. And one of them, we played a show in Texas. He showed up. Hey, I live in Texas now. Dead Panchos, and from the U.S. side, the bands that actually helped us out and gave us a hand, Union 13. They're the reason we ever recorded anything, because they introduced us to everybody. And the first band who actually brought us to the U.S. was Voodoo Glow Skulls, and we're forever grateful to Voodoo Glow Skulls in a lot of ways.
Yeah, Jose, how about you?
Yeah, definitely. Voodoo Glow Skulls are pretty up there. I think they did a lot of paving the way for just seeing, at least for me, like seeing like brown people play ska, like that kind of identified with
brown people on Epitaph.
And
we never
right. Yeah. The Spanish, they would have records that were in our, in language that my dad could understand, kind of thing, right? And so that was a big hit. Local stuff. There's a band called Quince Letras that was pretty instrumental in the scene. They would play a lot with Chinche Berinches. They would play a lot. They were paving the way for a lot of bands to come up and be able to kind of. They were becoming the top acts while they were looking for openers, and they would basically be our band eventually.
They helped us up in the day. They actually name us one of their songs.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's Quince this is pretty instrumental. I still talk to we have a rehearsal studio that we rent out monthly, and I see once in a while the guys from Quinta Letos just running around, and we kind of shoot the shit sometimes, and it's funny because they're like, oh man, you're still into it. I'm like, yeah. I mean, as long as I can do it, like if there's there's air in my lungs, I'm still gonna be playing this, pedaling my ska. I'm not gonna stop. But those are probably.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I'm saying those
You
are probably
mentioned
the
brown
most.
people keeping ska going. It's pretty much the same out here in Southern California. Especially traditional. You know, Jamaican gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a really funny story that when I played with Sister Nancy in the Reggae Fest out in Austin a couple years ago. I've never seen Sister Nancy live in person. I've only seen her records where she was like 15 or 16. And so like basically we're driving from out of town. It's like a 6-hour drive to Austin. We showed up right before we started playing, and I had eaten some really bad jerky, right? And I had to go take a shit really bad. And I was just like, I asked this like really tall lady, I was like, Jamaican lady, I'm like, excuse me, can I use your restroom? Because my stomach really hurts, like really hurts. And I had no idea who this was. And I remember she was like, yeah, you can use my restroom. And I'm like, okay. And then I bombed that restroom. It was inhabitable for human beings to use afterwards. And so we did it. We opened up the set. We opened up the day at the Austin Reggae Fest. And then, hours later, this majestic woman comes out and they introduced her as Sister Nancy. And then I just look her right in the eye. And she looks at me right in the eye. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Oh, that's great.
This is first and last time we did that event. We're not invited.
But she comes to LA regularly, the Dub Club. You've never gone to see her?
I you know what? I always think I'm gonna be like the guy in the corner that nobody wants. Like, what's this guy doing? but
well, most of the time, Quinto Soul backs her too.
Quinto Soul, yeah. Those guys are great.
Backing her, really. Yeah, Quinto Soul is her kind of her go-to, at least for a lot here in the States. Although the most recent show at the Dub Club was Soul Syndicate, Forward, Santa Davis, and them. But yeah, Quinto Soul, they play with her a lot. So shout out to Martin and the guys.
Well, they have a long history of, as you mentioned, them back in Legends from Jamaica, going back to the days of the Autonomous Music Making Machine, Gregory Isaacs, and a whole bunch of artists.
Like Dennis Al Capone.
Oh yeah, man, Quinto Soul.
True.
They don't
great
musician. The respect that they so rightly deserve.
True.
Yeah. And as you learn where ska came from, and you get more respect about the roots, and you become, if you become a big part of this huge movement, and you're just kind of humbled, right? And that we're considered in the same spectrum of music, kind of. So it's amazing. I'm always kind of tripping out.
Yeah, I was in Mexico with Clarendonians this past week, and the drummer, very young, very, very young. And Clarendonian said he really and truly has the Lloyd Knibb style down to a science. There's nothing that Knibb was doing that this guy wasn't doing.
And that was what is it, Reggae Boys?
Yeah.
A spinoff of Travelers.
Yeah, I think they alternate drummers, but we had met this drummer before in 2019 when the Clarendonians were there. And I was blown away. They said, oh no, somebody joked and said he was from Colombia, but he's actually from right there in Mexico. So they used him again.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice, man.
It's amazing.
Great musicians, yeah. As we near the end here, what current projects, what do you guys each want to promote and make sure?
Where's the sound coming from?
I don't know, a little feedback, yeah. But Bernie, let's start with you.
Well, right now we're taking a break. I mean, we've been playing for 25 years, and on the personal side, I work for a record label. I'm going to be traveling soon and working with some artists that I really enjoy. As a record label, I'm very proud to be there. They were the record label for Los Fabulosos Cadillacs in the U.S. for a while. We've had signed Manu Chao. We're currently Tokyo Ska Paradise, North American record label. So it's a pretty cool gig.
That's great.
You guys looking to sign any reggae ska traditional?
I'm sorry?
You looking to sign any traditional ska?
The label's always open to listening to everything. At that label, we got from electronica to rock music to cumbia music to even a Willy Bobo record.
Nice.
We actually did Adrian Quesada's Look at My Soul album, the Texas Side of Soul, Land Soul, or maybe I got the title, but I'm paraphrasing.
No, that's cool.
It's Adrian Quesada plays in Black Pumas, and he did a whole soul record from music from Texas from back in the day.
Yeah,
he got an ultra lineup. It's a fantastic record. So I really enjoy that side of other aside in music. As a musician, I've enjoyed traveling the world and many things, and as going into the music business, I just enjoy being around every kind of music. It's my daily joy.
No, I love that. And you mentioned those Fabulosos Cadillacs. I just saw them last weekend at Coachella.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, they had a huge crowd. I was really impressed with.
Even kids are playing in the band now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's super cool. Jose, what about you?
We have an album coming out. It's supposed to come out in fall, right when we go on tour with Big D and the Kids Table and Mustard Plug. So we have
I saw that announcement. That'll be a great deal.
So that's gonna be cool. This week we're flying out to the Midwest. We're gonna do a quick 5-4 day thing. We're gonna do Idaho. We're gonna do Denver, Salt Lake City, and then next week we have a show with Manic Hispanic, the Aquabats, Plague Vendor out at the House of Blues in Anaheim.
Cool.
It's gonna be kind of cool. I recommend you go because it's gonna be a day where the Aquabats do nothing but Cure covers, which
I saw that.
You should go. The inner goth man just wants. Yeah, I knew you want to see that, Bernie.
I do, but it's an orange. I'm getting old, man.
Yeah. But
so how do we get some of the legends to play some of these tours that you guys go on? LA is the exception. They'll get work here in LA, but outside of LA is difficult, next to impossible. Apart from Scatterlights is the only band that go, on tour.
And when you say legends, you're talking about like the Stranger Coles or the Keith and Tex and some of them, right?
Because I don't know any other legend.
Right.
Well, you mean like how do we just go out and stuff like
how
that?
do we open up some doors for them?
To open up for them? I mean,
no, open doors, not for you to necessarily.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I think it's just spreading the word, just kind of showing up and doing
Like
face to face and
West and some of those places.
Yeah, the Midwest, we're like famous in Indiana. I don't know, which is weird. Like every time we go to Indiana, there's like a newscast out there, and I love Indiana, like Indianapolis, the Melody Bar, the Melody, it's like such a nice bar. And so like I think bands just got to go out there and meet people. Like it's a pain in the ass sometimes because you're in the sticks, but like it's fun. Whenever I play out anywhere outside of LA, I like talking politics. I'll talk to people out there. I'll get with become friends with a lot of people. So you never know when you need a place to stay and sleep, and then you come back and they bring their friends, and then and just that becomes kind of a routine that you go every few months out there. So I think that's the way to do it. And it's easy to kind of just post yourself out there in social media, but you still have to kind of be there. People have to connect with you, or else they just won't do it. They won't put their part.
You need to hop in their van and do some research.
Junior, we can definitely use an extra driver. Sometimes
Love it. Nice.
No, if push come to shove, I guess the legends can always go to Mexico.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. And
I think the legends just have to go. They'll follow you guys. All the legends. It's just the non-legends that we have to.
We have to hustle a little bit more, but
just a little bit more.
That's the cool part about Mexico. Ska is huge, and some of the biggest bands in Mexico are ska bands, like stadium bands or ska bands.
Yeah.
True.
The big band in Latin America is Los Fabulosos Cadillacs, and they would do 2 stadiums like one night after the other.
Yeah, great.
Mexico City.
Yeah, nice.
So, any closing thoughts, gentlemen? We're nearing our point of departure.
I just want to thank you guys for inviting me, giving me a voice, and giving me and Bernie kind of something that nobody really cares about most of the time. They just don't.
You can't use don't.
And I think it's an important thing that you guys are doing.
Well,
and thank you.
We appreciate that.
Yeah,
we've been wanting to do this for a while, and
right?
Yeah, for the longest time, and you know, things happen sometimes, things fall through, things. But no, it's super important. I mean, we can speak, you know, from the Southern California side of things, but just the importance to, as Junor said early on, keeping the scene vibrant and growing, right? The exposure, you know, whether it's on the traditional side to the more ska punk, to the ska core, you know, yeah, it's super important, and we want to give thanks to you all. Bernie, any closing final thoughts?
Well, I want to thank you for having me. It's been an honor. It was unexpected, and you know, I'm just really happy to how big the scene has grown from when I started coming to Los Angeles, or when I started playing in Tijuana. I remember doing these shows, and suddenly this huge scene was created, and over the years it got more integrated, because back in the day, on one side there was the Mexican people and the other side was the American people, and usually there were shows on each other's on each one side, so they wouldn't go here, they wouldn't come there, and now I see everybody getting together. So that's the wonderful part of ska, and you know, and I'm just happy I can talk about these stories I've had from the past, and after 25 years of doing this, I'm very happy to be considered somewhat in the scene, and Los Angeles has always been like an adopted scene to us. Like I hear Jose talking about the bands, and he mentions us like we were a local band from here too, and it makes me feel good. Los Angeles was the first city to open its doors to us after Tijuana, and this was the first city we ever visited internationally. So we always grateful, and the first city who gave us the label and stuff. So we're very much in debt to Los Angeles and that scene, and we love them, and I'm always happy to be here.
Well, that's great.
So we have to work harder collectively to grow the scene in Tijuana.
Let me know what you need, and I know all the people.
We need another 150 people to come out to shows to see legends.
Okay.
Yeah. No. In Tijuana, we had those big reggae shows, and there's a big reggae scene. So
yes, but for the traditional skies, it's a struggle.
Yeah, no, there's more bands now today, so you would be surprised. Yeah, just, you know, shoot me an email. Let's talk about it, and I'll put you in contact with the right people. You know.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds like a deal.
That would be great. Well, guys, Jose, Bernie, definitely appreciate it, and thanks for all you do. Continue to make music and getting out there. Bernie, hopefully we see Los Kung Fu Monkeys on the road at some point this year or next year. Jose, gonna definitely make sure to say hi to you when we get to a show with Matamoska. So
yeah, you fellas, you guys are definitely invited. Let's
yeah.
We're gonna
any upcoming shows in LA?
Well, you have the one in the House of Blues Anaheim coming up, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's
House of Blues.
Right. Okay.
You guys are welcome. We can shotgun some $20 tall cans together. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you both. And Junior, thank you as always.
Yes, well, thanks to everyone for the ongoing support. Please subscribe to the podcast series and, of course, our YouTube channel. Follow at History of LA Ska on Instagram and join our Facebook group. That's growing really and truly.
Please follow
Fantastic.
this gentleman
Yes,
at Junor
Okay.
Francis.
and this series is produced by Rockery Radio at Rockery_radio.
Thank you all for watching and listening. Definitely appreciate all the love and support. Until next time, Jose, Bernie, Junior,
Indeed.
you all take care and be good. Get out and support some live music. Much love. Take care. Bye-bye.
Much love, guys. Thanks.
See ya.
Take care.
Adios.